Hello, my name is Jean Cook. I am from the University of West Georgia, and today I'm talking about promoting Galileo resources through scaffolded instruction. My background is I have degrees in math, physics, computer science, and library science. I was hired at UWG in 2007 to be an instruction librarian, and specifically their science liaison. So I worked with math, physics, chemistry, biology, geoscience, and computer science. In 2012, I was recruited to be the School of Nursing librarian as well, when the previous nursing librarian retired. And then in 2021, I took over as the College of Education librarian too. The Liaison Program at UWG works very similar to liaison programs at other universities. Our librarians are either chosen or recruited or appointed as liaisons to different departments or units like colleges on campus, depending on their specific expertise or experience. Our duties typically include collection management, like weeding and purchasing materials, information literacy, which includes all of our asynchronous and synchronous instruction, research support for specific research needs for students and faculty and staff, and then targeted outreach to try and increase our presence on campus within our departments. My early efforts, I think, reflect what a lot of early librarians do fresh out of library school. I've made sure that all of our online research guides were up to date, and then I emailed the department heads for all of my different departments twice a year with a menu of all the services that the library provides and all the things that I could do for their department and their faculty if their faculty would just get in contact with me. I had to typically spend the collection budget down, and then I would try to talk to the science colleagues at different committee meetings and ask questions about their classes. They were nice to me, but there were definitely some early challenges. I wasn't really getting a whole lot back from my faculty very early on. First off, especially in the sciences, there's a really packed curriculum of things that they have to cover in order to get accredited for their undergraduate degrees. We don't have graduate programs in a lot of our sciences here at the UWG. Our students also don't really have the knowledge on an undergraduate level or even the vocabulary to understand the professional literature. So I could get them into a physics journal, but they really wouldn't be able to understand the concepts and the literal Greek and calculus that was being done in front of them. So the faculty were already used to teaching without me before I had come there, and the faculty and students did not even know about our materials and services and the things that we had, so they didn't really think that they needed us because they've been doing it without us. And when I did manage to get into an instruction session, a lot of times I heard a lot of, I didn't know y'all did that. That would have been so helpful when I did blah, 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 blah. And so I could see that there was a lot of need for faculty instruction about our services as well. There were some early successes, sort of, I guess. I did get some faculty coming back to me with requests for books and sometimes requests for instruction sessions. Usually these were those typical early librarian instruction sessions where they're basically a bus tour of the library website, and the idea is if I show you everything, you will have the knowledge to pick the little apples that will actually be the bits that you need to do your specific instruction or your specific assignment need. But really, there was often little to no interaction with the students. I had a script. I knew what I was going to type and what I was going to click on and what was going to happen. I was very afraid of dealing with oh my God, what if I'm trying to demonstrate this and we don't have this an article that allows me to demonstrate this thing. And sometimes there were not even a specific assignment that the students need to do. They were just sort of getting blasted with library information with very little context. So early successes for me were recognizing my own limitations. I improved my instruction techniques. I read professional literature. I went to conferences. I went to immersion, and I really learned to focus more on student needs, on learning objectives and assessment, and less on the library information and as a whole, and focusing on what do they specifically need to know to be able to do whatever their research goal is at that moment. That's the stuff they really care about. That's the stuff they need to be practicing in that session when I'm there to help them. I also developed relationships with people instead of trying to do it with entire departments. So rather than reach out to the entire chemistry department, I had a burgeoning really good relationship with two specific doctors in the chemistry department who invited me into their sophomore core classes to teach about Google Scholar, which I did. And then I was like, oh, but it's actually easier to find all this stuff over here in Galileo and in ERIC and in ProQuest Education or, our chemistry journals that we pay so much for over here on the chemistry research guide. And they I had such a positive response to that from their students that they invited me into a freshman learning community where they would bring up like cool stuff that had happened in the chemistry realm in the last year, and then I would help them find news articles and other background information on that. And then that evolved even further into working with some of those kids remembered me and contacted me about the senior capstone, or the faculty members would forward their students to me as they did their final senior capstone / undergraduate research projects. Similar thing happened in biology. There was a junior level required course for the major where they had to research animal behaviors, and I was able to get them into the GALILEO resources for biology, and their professor and those students would remember me a year or two later when they needed to do their senior capstone projects. So even back then, I was touching students multiple times. That's a terrible way. I was reaching out to students and interacting with them multiple times. College of Nursing, as of 2012, when I took over there, was probably my biggest success. At the time, they had a Bachelor of Science in Nursing and Master of Science in Nursing, and they just started an EDD in nursing education. Bachelor of Science in Nursing had 2 specific nursing research classes, depending on the track that you took, and the MSN Nursing also had specific courses with research needs, but they hadn't really interacted with us a whole bunch because I think they didn't know what we could do. So the first thing I did was try to establish a relationship. Again, I made sure all of our research support materials, our research guides and stuff were up to snuff. And then I emailed the dean of the college, and the nice thing about her was that she said, hey, we have a new doctoral program chair and she's got some specific needs. Can you get in contact with her? And what was happening is we started our doctoral program, but a lot of these doctoral students were older adults who were returning for the first time, maybe in decades, to academia. And some of them remembered print indices to give you an idea of the last time that some of these students had done research. They had to learn how to be online learners. They had to learn how to be self-disciplined, how to write an APA, how to work CourseSten, and how to work the library, all at the same time that they were trying to learn all of this doctoral program level stuff that's in the actual curriculum. And so the idea was that we would have a more in-depth orientation the summer before the first program so they could learn all the meta of being an online modern student before they actually got into the real curriculum. And so my philosophy is to try and meet expectations and then exceed them. The original ask was for me to do one face-to-face session where I just sort of introduced them to some databases. I come back with, hey, I see that you're doing this online orientation too. Can I shoot a couple intro videos for that so that they can watch those? And then the face-to-face session will be more meaningful and go a little bit more in depth. And hijinks ensued, and we ended up with an integrated 4-week asynchronous course with final face-to-face session with the students on campus at the end. Just to give you some idea of what this is, when I say integrated, it was integrated between learning how to learn, a bit of nursing stuff, a bit of writing stuff, a bit of CourseSten stuff, and a bit of library stuff. So for instance, here they would do an online readiness assessment tool, how they learn, then they would get the current Galileo password, and with that they would read some basic nursing stuff about quantitative and qualitative approaches, use the library research guide to get into our databases to find 2 different articles that are qualitative and quantitative, and then use the writing support guidelines to write an APA short essay about those articles. Later on week 3 was our sort of another touch point with them, and in that point, this looks like a lot, but in actuality, each of these videos are maybe 3 to 5 minutes long, so it's perhaps 20 minutes total content. But they would watch these different videos and be guided through learning about different stuff to do with the UWG library in specific, and then also some fun tutorials and stuff we had found online. And then they were again asked to get into the nursing databases at UWG and do a short literature search and find a couple articles on their topic. And that was a really big success. When we did our face-to-face session at the end of the summer, we were able to focus more on advanced search techniques and specifically citation managers because that was a request from the faculty. They were much more interactive because the students had been playing around with the Galileo tools. So they had a series of like very clear questions that they came to that session prepared to get answers to, and some of them we were able to answer in the class. For everybody, other ones, I was able to say, hey, contact me afterwards. That's a specific situation to you, and I'll help you deal with it. Faculty members liked what I was saying, and they were shouting out different situations that they had hit that applied to the different things that I was trying to teach. And then what was really nice is the faculty members were saying, you better listen because you're going to need this in like 2 or 3 weeks when we do such and such a research class. And I was able to leverage conversations about that at lunch into getting an invitation into the class to do a research review of, they would do their first sort of pass at the research, and then I would write basically a critique of what they had done and give some more suggestions so they could do a better second pass into the databases, using them even more. This was not just true in the doctoral program. I was later invited into the RSN to BSN and the MSN online orientations. And it was really nice. If there were face-to-face classes, I would get entry into the nursing research course and get to have your typical instruction session where we talked about CINAHL and which database to choose for their topics and help them do some evidence research for their evidence-based practice class. And the MSN things, because they were online only and mostly meeting asynchronous, I basically shot some follow-up videos where we talked about those advanced search techniques I had covered in face-to-face for the doctoral programs, but now I did it online for the MSN programs. And then they were assigned a research project where they were very clearly remembering not only our resources, but also me, and that I could help them use our resources. So a typical nursing student library interaction in their program started to become that they would at some point get a basic introduction to the library and to me in their orientation program for graduate and distance education students. If they didn't get that, they would meet me at a face-to-face session during their program. And then they would, when the assignment was actually assigned in their different classes, right when the professor would say, hey, you've got to write about this, you need 8 different sources, they've got to be cited in APA, and they need to be scholarly, and they've got to talk about nursing theory. Right underneath that would be a link to the research guide, my contact information, and 2 or 3 videos that I had shot that would specifically help them with that immediate assignment. So I got a lot of follow-up for reference and consultations from the students. Some of them were prompted to contact me by the professor. Other ones just did it because they now knew that if I need help with nursing research, Jean is the one that I contact. And then I got a lot of unsolicited questions later on as they were hitting different things. Hey, you helped me with this. Now I've got this problem. Can you help me with that? So I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks goes on in the year where I don't have at least 1 or 2 questions from nursing. I mean, literally every week I'm getting something from them, so, which I love. It's great to have that relationship with the students and the faculty. So measurable effects of this sort of relationship of interacting with the students multiple times throughout their career, even if it's at different levels, was that our reference, referral, and consultation questions went up. I've met with them in all sorts of methods. We get regular invitations now into the nursing research courses where we didn't before. I have regular professor referrals from the nursing students to consult with me. So they'll say, I can help you with this. And then as you're getting into the databases, make sure you check with Jean to get good keywords. And then the professors themselves are now consulting me on their own research needs. So sometimes it's just straight up searching. Sometimes it's looking up cited citations for how much their research has been cited. Sometimes it's, should I publish in this journal? Should I present at that conference? So even stuff like Ulrich's gets pretty heavy use at my university because I'm using it to tell them about all of the different research needs. There's a measurable effect on our tools. This is for the last 2 years, but you can see that our nursing guide, which is mainly used by our undergraduates, definitely spikes when undergraduate projects are due, but is anywhere between 800 or 900 at a high and anywhere between like 100 or 200 visits a month at a low. So that's really nice to see that that's actually getting frequent use. And then our ADD nursing education sort of alternates between 75 to 100 and maybe around 250 to 300, but also we have far fewer doctoral students than we do undergraduate nursing students. So I'm glad to see that that number is also going really well. We also see a measurable effect on our resources. So you can see here, this is full text downloads from our last accreditation report. And CINAHL was getting 20 to 25,000 full text downloads. They were actually clicking on the article and reading through the entire article, or at least browsing the article rather than just looking at the records. And just between the nursing-specific databases like CINAHL, Medline, and ProQuest Nursing, you can see we have about 45,000 full-text downloads of resources just specific to nursing. And I know that our nursing folks are also using the psychology stuff and the ERIC stuff as well. So those definitely went up as they became more aware of library resources, which then had an effect on our collection management because now our online programs are using more nursing journals, and they're requesting more stuff through Iliad just because they now know that Iliad exists and that these nursing GALILEO resources exist. So increased awareness means they're using them more, and using them more helps us identify and advocate for needed journals. So we got 12 different journals simply because, well, two reasons. One, our faculty and our students were asking us, hey, can we just get this thing because I'm requesting it all the time? And then two, that was actually being reflected in our Iliad stats, that these were being requested very commonly. So we were able to use that to advocate for the money and the budget to get permanent subscriptions to these different important journals, which then turned around into a measurable impact on outreach and marketing, because then we could take that back to nursing and say, hey, look, you asked for this stuff, you're using this stuff. Because you're using this stuff and you asked us for this stuff, we were able to get it. Isn't that great? We have all this stuff now. And keep asking us for more stuff, because when you ask for more stuff, we can get more stuff. So that really improved our collection management relationship with them. In the past 7 years, I've worked with them on the accreditation meeting and report that I referenced earlier. I've collaborated with them on faculty grants and presentations and articles. And I've even, they're doing a curriculum revamp right now because there are new accreditation standards for their programs. So they wanted someone who was familiar with nursing but not in nursing to lead the faculty discussions in a neutral manner. And they thought of me, and they invited me over for a couple hours to lead those very important early faculty discussions with them. So I was flattered and gratified that our relationship was at that level. Lessons learned. I find it's much more effective to target a specific course and or people than it is to just target an entire department. Really rely on those relationships that you develop with people, and even a very low level curriculum map where you just read through the catalog for the majors in your area and see if there are any courses that mention a research project or something like that can help you identify the best people to contact. Full hands are better than empty. Anytime that I would just say, hey, let me know if I could do something for you, was much less effective than if I said, hey, I see that you have this thing. I've got this tutorial, and this research guide. Could you share them with your students? And they'd be like, sure, I could share that with my students, because then they can just do it and it's easy for them and they don't have to think about it, versus, if they contract me to shoot new videos or something for them, then they have to think about me and keep them in their headspace and plan for me. And I also like to say yes and. Again, they don't really know what we can do. So I like to meet their expectations and say, sure, I can talk about this, that, and the other thing, but I can also use that to fold in what I know is effective in library instruction and helping their students. And it's just that, like, we get a computer classroom, or we have a computer classroom, maybe you should come over to the library. Or it would be, they're science students, so they really need to know about Iliad because they're probably going to need to know it. And if the professor didn't ask me to cover that, I know that for these kind of topics, that's going to be important. I'm applying this right now in education just to show you. I started with education in summer 2021. I started with developing I inherited actually collection development spreadsheets with them where they could place requests, and then I would track, I've sent this to the purchasers, hey, it's in the catalog, here's the permalink for it. From there, working with a faculty member on their collection development needs, one of them asked me to do a citation management training for Zotero for the doctoral students. And that's not necessarily specific to the library. In fact, I think they were expecting me to cover Google Scholar a lot. But instead, I said, okay, sure, I'll talk about Zotero in conjunction with the databases. And I didn't really tell them I was going to do that, but I took the advantage of that opportunity to introduce them to myself, and to our research guides, and to ERIC and Galileo passwords and logins and all sorts of fun things. That went so well, I was able to leverage it into a follow-up instruction session where we just talked about database searches and keyword selections. Now that the doctoral students had seen me twice and they knew I existed and what the research guide was, they were getting into the databases more, and I started getting a very frequent doctoral student contact about specific dissertation needs in March and April of 2022. And I also saw that they were having very frequently asked questions. So I was able to use that faculty member who had reached out to me in January, and I asked her to get me in touch with the doctoral program orientation leaders. And for them, only one of them responded back to me positively, but when I shot the videos and the instruction materials and the tutorials and stuff for that person, I also shot it generic enough that it could be used for any doctoral program orientation and education. And so I was able to go to the other two who hadn't responded to me and say, hey, I've got this tutorials and a couple of research guides specific to your program. Would you like to include these in your doctoral program? And all three of them said yes. So I went from no doctoral program orientation to one person saying yes to now reaching out to all three of those programs and all of the College of Ed doctoral students. This summer, I'm hoping to leverage that even more into reaching them in their programs next year, hopefully answering more doctoral programs and doing an even more thorough orientation in the next summer. So that's what I recommend, is that you focus on student needs at the time, and you take early successes and you leverage those into later ones. The nice thing about libraries is that we are very interactive between our different departments. We can help everyone with their research needs, and sort of a rising tide floats all boats. So I found that improving relationships with one department really opens doors within that department and sometimes even without it. If you have any questions, my name is Jean Cook. I'm from the University of West Georgia, and my email address is jcook@westga.edu, and I look forward to collaborating with you.